Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education Committee, the whole meeting for May the 14th, 2019. Julie, could you please take the roll?
Yes. Andy Duran.
Present.
Leanne Charlo.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Ann Hill.
Present.
Julie Gottschall, present. Richard Hegg, absent. John Rosen.
Present.
We have a quorum, so we can begin. We're going to start by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If anybody has public comment, like to address the board, please do so. Nobody's jumping up. If anybody would like to email the board, please feel free to email myself or Dr. Sophie. We offer the opportunity every month for board members to suggest a future agenda item. If anybody wants to make sure we get a agenda item on our monthly agendas, or if anybody would like a discussion item raised that is not on the agenda tonight to be briefly discussed. Not hearing any. We're going to move on to our very first item, which is our welcoming the two representatives from School Exec Connect, who we have hired to lead us through our very important, perhaps our most important job over the next year, to find a replacement superintendent for the wonderful, amazing, impossible to replace Dr. Jean Sophie. So I guess we hand the floor over to Gary Zabilka and Harry Rossi. Sorry. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Harry and Gary.
There, yeah, easy. I remember the first names.
First of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to do what we think is a very exciting job, but as you mentioned, a difficult job replacing someone like Jean Sophie. Known Jean a long time, going back to very early searches, and your board certainly did a great job in selecting her for this job. So we do want to be really expeditious tonight, because we know you do have a 7 o'clock meeting, so we're going to try to go through all our agenda with you as quickly as possible and get through this so that you're on time for the next meeting. So we're going to go right through the agenda, starting with number 1, first decisions. Gary, I should have given Gary a chance to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Gary Zabilka. I've been a member of the firm for about 8 years. I'm currently a partner and also was a retired superintendent from
Yeah, I'm just remembering now that John and I are the only folks who've actually met you guys, and so Harry and Gary are both veteran educators, both have sat as superintendents for years. Harry, I don't know about Gary, but I know Harry, do you still teach programs in education?
Yeah, I was superintendent of schools in Northbrook Glenview for 18 years. I've been an adjunct professor at Loyola for 20 now. I do consulting for the university. Actually, we just redid our superintendent's program, and I was one of the people that was the co-chair of that. Kevin actually was part of our group in putting together our new program, mentoring and all kinds of things. So I've been involved in public education literally my entire adult life now. So again, thank you for giving us this opportunity.
They know everybody in the industry, so it's
It helps.
Yep.
I do want to let you know, though, that we started our meeting at 6, so if it goes beyond 7, that's fine, because we don't exactly have another meeting. It's just all part of one meeting.
yeah, we don't want to rush through
So,
it. This is
of course, you could
important.
always finish earlier, too, so it doesn't make any difference.
Well, let's start with first decisions, and confidentiality is on there just so that everyone is aware of the fact that this is considered to be a confidential search. And in the state of Illinois, though I know we have a lot of things that detractors say about us, and much of it I guess is probably true. One of the good things that we have right now is the ability to do searches like this that are confidential, which means that we can go out and recruit the best candidates for you. And they we don't have to reveal their names to the public unless and until they become the individual who is, whom the board decides to hire. So it's really a good situation in Illinois, and Gary and I hold that confidentiality golden. We preach it everywhere we go, and we're saying the same to you, that when we get to the point of presenting candidates to you, they will all have been told that their candidacy is being kept confidential by us and will be by the board. And if the board decides to have a stakeholders committee when they get to the final part of the process, that anyone who is part of that stakeholders group will be asked to sign a confidentiality agreement, so that people who do apply, and even if they get to have the opportunity to be with the board for an interview, the names still will not be made public, certainly by us, and we always tell the candidates that the boards will understand this as well. So it's really a good thing for us to be able to go out and find really good people who already have good jobs. And that's, that's the main benefit of confidentiality, that people who already have very good jobs, maybe if they knew immediately upon applying for a job that their name was going to be public, would have a chilling effect.
Yeah.
They'd be worried about what their board might think if they didn't get the job, if they don't move forward, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a good thing to have that confidentiality. So the second bullet point is really something that's very practical. We ask for 3 liaisons to do this search. The first liaison would be the person to whom we would directly report to, a member of the board. Typically it's the board president, but not always. So we would ask that the board decide who that liaison would be. Not that we won't, not that all of the information that we're going to be presenting will come to all of the board, but sometimes it's really nice to have someone who is the point person for the board. So I don't know if you're prepared to do that right now, Mark, or?
We haven't discussed it. I'm happy to do it if people are comfortable with that. I can take that lead. Sounds good to
Consider
me.
yourself nominated,
Yep.
seconded,
You're
and
here. I
appointed.
guess so.
Okay, great, well done. The second liaison is someone who would help us with logistics, facilitation, someone who knows the school schedules, someone who will be able to help us, with room setup, that sort of thing. Typically, it's the administrative assistant to the superintendent, but again, not always. So.
We've already talked about it, if you'd like to appoint Shelley.
Shelley, you good with that?
Yes.
Shelley would love to do that. She's awesome, by the way. She will.
I can't see your face. And then the third one would be someone who is involved with your website, your tech person, for when we put the...
Probably Kevin. Kevin does more of the website, but also Shelley does that too. I would say Kevin
Okay.
should
so
be
Kevin
involved in
would
that
be
piece.
The point person for that. Okay, great. So the third item is approve the template, and I think that's the last document in your packet. It says Superintendent Lake Bluff District 65 up top. So this would be the template that would go up on our website when we announce
Oh, that
the
one.
vacancy. We do realize that there is a typo on there under the address. It says District 75, resident 65. We've already corrected that on master.
Yeah. It also says,
Correct.
it also says Green Oaks and Lake Forest under community
Yeah.
center.
Yes, that was the best that we could tell, looking at the map that we had looked at. You don't see those communities at all? It's
Nope.
strictly
Lake Bluff.
Okay, perfect.
No, should we
Knollwood.
put, should we put
Probably share it with-
unincorporated Lake Bluff and Knollwood?
And Knollwood, Knollwood needs to be put on there for sure.
Knollwood, and should it also specifically say unincorporated?
Unincorporated Lake
Lake
Bluff. They feel left out sometimes,
don't
and I
want
think they
people.
need to,
So Lake Bluff, Knollwood, and unincorporated Lake Bluff.
Yeah.
yes.
Perfect.
I had a question about the under qualifications. What you guys have there, is that standard? Typical? And the thing that popped out at me as not being there is often we have people who are PhDs applying to this role. Is that a requirement?
That's something that the board can determine.
It's not a state requirement,
It is not a
Right.
state requirement.
and I don't recall our time on the board, well, we've always been with Gene, and then the predecessors have always been educational doctors.
So you can either say firmly that it's a requirement, doctorate required, or you can say doctorate
Preferred.
if there is someone who may be,
There could be an exceptional case, I suppose.
Well, Mike Semick in Lake Forest doesn't
Yeah,
have it,
well,
so.
And that's been a source of controversy.
Yeah.
What do you guys
I
think?
think it's something we should consider. I don't know that it needs to be a threshold qualification.
So PhD
I
is
agree.
preferred kind of
I don't even
language?
know that I'd say preferred. I don't know
No,
that it
I-
necessarily is preferred.
I
you know?
agree. I think we should keep it open for anyone who's qualified,
Yeah.
regardless of academics.
Agreed.
I think,
preferred?
no,
No,
nothing about it,
not
silent.
preferred.
Thinking as far as this document, I don't need it to say PhD preferred, but I think in this community that it probably would carry some weight. So I think it's something we should keep in mind as we're looking at candidates.
Yeah.
That's
And I-
also
That it
something
probably would be
we'll address
preferred.
as we do focus groups, not only with board members,
Yeah.
but throughout the community. It may come from them that they would like to see somebody with a PhD, and the information that we glean from them, we share with the board, and the board could also then use that as a determination at that point, if so decided.
Let's make a note to circle back to that, over time and revisit that.
At this point, we'll leave it off of this document
Yeah.
so that the next,
This is the basis for any advertisement, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mainly, the main thing is when they see the Lake Bluff Superintendency, we try to tell boards, try not to wordsmith this too much, because it's mainly to let people know a little bit about the school district, and believe me, anyone who is interested in applying for the job will look up Lake Bluff, and they'll know all they need to know when they see where it's located, when they see student achievement, when they see, the size of the district and all of that. So this is, basic document. But to say, what we will say to you tonight, though, is if you have any other changes beyond what we've talked about tonight, let us know. Certainly time for us to, to make any revisions to the template.
Does it read correctly?
I have a quick question for Jay. It says $19.7 million budget. I'm uncomfortable with that, are you? It says 18,861 for operating expenditure per pupil and 10,137 instructional expenditure per pupil.
Yeah, those figures came off the 2017-18 school report card information, the statewide information.
You comfortable with that? It's on the report card. And it says that it's balanced
That's
budget.
not an answer, though.
Right.
What's the downside? What are you concerned about?
We
had
usually
any
share
mistakes in
we're
the
about
past.
17, that's where my concern is.
There's been mistakes in the past on the report card.
Debt service and capital spending, so it's a whole dollar number, and it's not, the capital changes from year to year.
As long as it's accurate, what we know it includes. We don't have to go tracking down a
It is.
mistake.
Okay.
That's fine.
And then the other thing it says is balanced budget, and I know it's semantics, but Jay is going to be talking to you tonight about the fact we aren't going to have a balanced budget this year. but we're gonna balance it, but it's not balanced, so,
But the budget you passed was balanced.
yes.
Yeah, it-
So
it-
I'm-
As of this time,
I'm okay with it, but I wanna make sure you're okay with it. Okay.
And the search calendar, we're gonna leave that for later because we're gonna talk specifically to you about the search calendar. So we just put that on so you would know that the search calendar will be part of this, but we're going to go through the search calendar with you specifically, and depending upon what we get to tonight, that's what will appear on the template.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the template? Okay, so for your, we're on to number 2, and this is what we would be suggesting to be put up on your district website. Once we have an approved calendar from the board with regard to the search, we always suggest that the board puts up on the website, once, the initial announcement is up, that the board puts up the general calendar for the search so that people in the community are aware that the search has started, that it's ongoing, and that generally when things are going to happen. So once we, again, put all of that together, that's what would go up on your website, assuming the board wants to have the calendar on the website. Typically, boards do that, but we have worked with,
Why wouldn't you?
some boards just have said, let's leave it unspecific in case we want to change it. But the vast majority of the boards we worked with say put the calendar out
I would. I think we should. Anybody else feel differently?
yeah, I agree.
No, put it up.
there. Okay.
We always try to err on the side of being transparent, no matter what, so.
So that will go up on your website at some point once we have an approved calendar. Letter to staff and community, we'd also like to have put up on the website. And we have a sample for you that's in the packet. This is something that you may want to wordsmith and get back to us. This is pretty standard in terms of what we typically would ask the board to put up on the website. But you may want to take some time and wordsmith that.
I don't think it's quite
We
9
would
years.
recommend that you do have a sample letter up on.
Feels like it.
Is it not 9 years, Dr. Sullivan?
At the, 7 years now, it'll be 8 years.
Okay, 8 years.
It feels like 9, but.
So we will take a look at it.
But we are recommending that you do put
Yeah.
a letter,
Sure.
sample letter up on your website. Okay.
So you may want to have a couple people volunteer to work on that.
And then approve the survey and link to the survey. This is the survey that would be up on your website that people could go to. We recommend that all boards do this. Most boards do face-to-face focus groups these days. There have been some, including some large districts, that have chosen not to do face-to-face focus groups. Our recommendation is that we do focus groups with administrators, teachers, staff members, parents, in addition to having the online survey, so that anyone, for whatever reason, who can't make one of the focus groups, always has the opportunity to weigh in online with the online survey.
This is simply a draft of what the online survey would look like. Obviously, you see things that are blacked out here only because this is a template of what is typically used in doing a search. The first question is one just to determine who is completing the survey. And again, this would be available on your website. Okay, so that's where people would access this online survey. Upon doing that, The second page asks, please select the district's greatest strengths. And this is a question, again, that we typically ask during the focus group part of the process as well. But again, it's for people who either don't attend focus groups or if they'd also like to weigh in online as well. So it gives people those opportunities to provide input. The third page is to select the district's greatest challenges and barriers. And again, they would select a maximum of 5 responses. So they could simply check boxes there. There's also an open-ended box at the end where if they wanted to write comments, they have that opportunity. Then under number 4, which is the last page that you have there as a part of the survey, is to select the most important characteristics and skills the next superintendent should possess to be successful in this community. Again, they have an opportunity to select 5 different discriminators there, as well as an open-ended aspect where they could write in whatever they wanted. This may be a place where if they wanted a candidate to have a PhD, for example, or some other credential, they could write that in there as well. And then we've got questions 5 and 6, which are open-ended questions completely, where they can just list what they feel are the 3 most important goals for District 65 to achieve in the next 3 years, and anything else that they would like to say about the selection of the next superintendent. Just gives people opportunity to weigh in their thoughts. Again, this is the typical survey that we use. However, we can customize it if there's some other data or information that the board may be looking for. You have that opportunity. So we can leave this with you, and if over the course of the next few weeks, if you wanted to share with Dr. Sophie, and or if you want to reach out directly to us, things that you would like us to consider modifying for you, we'd be more than glad to do that.
Gary, I think to be consistent with what we've done in the district, the Park District, the Village, and the School District did a community survey about 1.5 years ago and asked how the community wants to be communicated with.
Okay.
And believe it or not, in Lake Bluff, everybody wants to be communicated via paper and mail. So I think to reach and at least make it available, if you had paper surveys in both the schools, that if somebody wanted to answer the survey, they could come in and fill it out and turn it in that way,
Sure.
would be beneficial and hit maybe community citizens that are not on computer and would still like to fill it out.
Okay.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I
would like to be able to reach people who are not actively engaged online. Well, that's
put them at the
Not
in
a
Village
bad
Hall.
That's a good idea.
So, but we've done that in the past with important decisions, and I think we need to be consistent with
I
that.
think that's a good idea to put it at the other places where people go. I also think we need to think about how we promote this and get the word out. I was thinking of the Village, their Friday night blast, the newsletter, that thing they send out every Friday would probably be a good way to promote it and let people know that this is available. This is coming down the pike.
And I'm wondering if there aren't opportunities to customize it, to hit at some of the issues that we know to be important in our community. And Jean and Mark, you're probably in the best position to think about that. But, we know, for example, that financial background or some understanding, maybe that can be reflected in here somewhere. I mean, as I look at this, it's hard not to want to check everything. So I'm curious as to how you use it to, actually come away with the consensus as to what's most important in the community. But if anyone has ideas, I think we should look for that opportunity.
I agree, because I think there's so many things with the amount of feedback that you're going to get that I'll be surprised if there's a real focused agenda that we get out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe we will, but
I think you're going to be really surprised, because usually with these, they're pretty consistent, and the priorities kind of rise to the top automatically. You'll be real surprised.
how many of these do you suspect that we'll be getting back?
In this community, we have pretty good response rates. I don't know, I think,
They won't be mailed out.
I'd be happy
they'll
with
just be-
300.
So 300 people would have to come and
300
pick one up?
responses. That might be two
No,
people
it'll be
in the
available
household.
online, so.
Many people will do it online as well, probably, but we
But I think it is
reach
important
the
that we
ones who
figure out a
won't.
way to make the hard copy available.
Yeah.
Can you guys give an example, or do you have an example off the top of your mind of how other clients may have customized this, like what were they going after the survey? Like were there a question that pops to mind that they included or a characteristic that they included that may not be there now?
Sure. I don't mind sharing that the majority of the districts that we've worked with recently, even though they've had challenges going on, specific challenges, for the most part, this covers quite a variety.
Flushes it out.
Covers things like facilities issues, covers things such as enrollment, it covers diversity issues. And what this is meant to do is just provide somewhat of a snapshot as to what those priorities are. To answer Richard's question regarding, how does all this get tallied, especially when it's online? What it does is it tallies by percentage as to how many people responded to each of those discriminators. And what Harry and I will do is, upon the completion of the survey, as well as any paper copies that there may be that we would add in on our own, we would then come here to a board, we would do a presentation in front of the entire audience and share with you what percentage of people responded that these are the key areas that they would like to share about the district, whether it be their strengths, the challenges that they see, as well as then the written comments are also shared with the board, as to what people say. So as far as actual modification goes, we did have one district where we have diversity listed. They wanted not only diversity, but also inclusion listed along with diversity. To be honest with you, in the last half a dozen searches that we've done, that was probably the primary change that I can recall that was used. I'm not sure if you remember any others.
And the other part of it is, too, that we're going to be picking out common attributes that we see between and among all of the groups and online, and we're going to present that as a profile to you of what people have said they're looking for. So you'll be able to see from the data that we're going to collect and then analyze and present to you what are the most important areas that people are looking for, what are the most important characteristics they're looking for in the next superintendent.
When do you need a final, an approved, board-approved survey and a board-approved letter? Can you give us a date so that we can then get, I think I need to ask a few people to, if they want to volunteer to get together and brainstorm and see what we think about it.
For the actual survey, as well as for determining the focus group dates, ideally by the 1st of August.
Oh, no problem.
Because this is something that your community is not going to be interested in doing at this point. They're not going to be interested. In fact, even though we're asking for it the 1st of August, that gives us time to create it online, have it ready to go. And more than likely, we're going to ask for like a September 1 date to actually launch it, make it live, so that people can respond.
Sure.
Because they'll want to get their children started back in school first, and then once school has begun, then their interest will turn to the next superintendent.
Same for the letter?
Same for the letter, because we'll roll all of that out at the same time.
Okay.
So when is your first day of school next school?
August 22nd or 23rd, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So again, the 1st of August gives us the opportunity to set it all up, then, if you will. And then with a possible launch date right around, probably right after Labor Day.
So are there a couple of people here who would be willing to sit at an ad hoc meeting? We'd have to do it a few weeks in advance, because we'd have to post it if we have 3 of us, to brainstorm a letter and a survey?
For sure, I will.
I'll do that too, Mike.
Andy and Ann? All right. Anybody else? Okay. I'll set it up, and maybe Jean would be gracious with her presence.
I'd be happy to help you.
Great. Yes, we'll set something up the next couple, we've got plenty of time, obviously, to look at it.
So if it's going to be the 3 of you, then I'm going to need to know, because we'll have to post
Yeah.
ahead of time.
But it'll take us a little while to get our calendars aligned, to find an evening that we can sit down, but we have plenty of time to do that, so. All right, I appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
I do have one question about the survey, especially related to just being an open link on the website. This may be a non-issue, but have you noticed in any of your searches members from outside of the community actually completing the survey and filling it in just because they felt like it? Past residents or past school supporters or people in neighboring communities? I don't know if it's an issue, but it's...
Angry.
Yeah,
Former
former
residents.
angry people. I think it's just worth questioning.
How do you screen for that?
What's that?
How do you screen for that?
Yeah, I mean, is there a way to screen it, right?
There really isn't. Our program does is keeps track of IP addresses.
Okay.
Just to make sure that there's not repetitive, you don't have somebody sitting at the same computer filling out
Great.
survey after
Okay.
survey after survey.
I never even
trying
thought
to
about
sway the
that.
results. Okay. Also, we've checked to make sure the Russians are not involved.
Good.
But we're worried about the Chinese, right?
But nonetheless, that is one of the measures to try to prevent any kind of survey fraud.
Great.
We list right on it, it's not an exact scientific survey, but at the same time, it will provide a good profile of what, in general, people are looking for.
Thank you.
Which is very important, because as a superintendent candidate, I would read those very thoroughly to see if I felt like I matched the profiles. And I only applied to districts where I felt like I was the match. So it's important.
Do we have surveys from the last time?
We did surveys the last time.
Probably the other
Probably
search firm
do.
has them.
But I might even have it somewhere. Oh, God, I got a lot of stuff.
We don't have them in district files, I know that.
I can look. I have some stuff that goes way back. I don't know, can't promise it, though.
Did we do
Dr.
that?
Sovey, wasn't it
No,
our firm?
HYA did that.
HYA?
No.
HYA did that search.
I'll make a note to take a look for it.
Was it significant in the last hire?
The surveys? I remember we got it was, I don't remember it specifically, but I remember it being sort of similar to this, and you got they're able to build a characteristic list of what is important to the people in the community, and I don't recall us customizing it, but we were very new at the time, so I don't know. The guys who did the search were veterans like these gentlemen, and then we kind of, I think, leaned on them. Oh, I don't know.
If I may just interject, again, it's the information from this survey as well as the focus groups that we developed a superintendent's profile. And the profile is typically a list of 10 to 12 significant characteristics that we feel best match what Lake Bluff District 65 is looking for right now. And oftentimes we ask board members to keep that in front of them as they're interviewing candidates, to utilize it as somewhat as, not necessarily a job description, but just to make sure that the characteristics that people have weighed in on and said they felt were important are found in those characters, in those candidates.
And by the way, we will have them right in front of us as we're doing our screening interviews as well. So on to advertising decisions. We're recommending that the online version of Education Week that the board advertises, obviously we'll take care of that for you, that you do the online version of Education Week. As you probably know, Education Week is sort of the Bible for national education, and superintendents all over the country read it. They used to read the paper version, and I would always say that the superintendents who were looking for jobs read Education Week, and some of them still do, the way sports fans read the Sun-Times, that is back to front, because all of the superintendent advertisements are in the back. Bottom line, though, is it's extremely expensive these days to advertise on the paper version, and it's great for the search firms because they get to have their name there, usually in large letters. But frankly, we don't recommend that just because of the cost of it, and the fact that almost all of the people that you're going to be looking for these days are going to be reading the online
Absolutely.
version of that
Yeah,
week.
I totally agree with that.
So,
Which is a fraction of the cost of the print versions of the same advertisements.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this makes me think about a question that circles back up to qualifications that we had on our original ad. If we're talking, or are we talking about a national search, or are we limiting ourselves to sitting or existing or qualified Illinois professionals? And if we're looking nationally, what is required to be a Illinois superintendent? You have what's the certification called that
I have a superintendent endorsement.
is that the main thing that's required? And is there
You have to have that.
reciprocation between states, or how do people become an Illinois certified if they come from somewhere else?
Sure. There is a test they would have to take upon coming to Illinois. If they have a superintendent's endorsement from another state, they would have a year to take, possibly depending upon what their transcripts demonstrated that they had taken to get their certification, but they may possibly have to take a class, and if not even the class, all candidates have to take a written test to get their superintendent's, now it's called a license instead of a superintendent's endorsement.
So do we have opinions or feelings or concerns about a national search, which is limiting it to Illinois only, or what do you think about that?
I would think that Illinois would be strongly preferred, although I wouldn't shut the door on anything. But I just feel like there's so many unique dynamics in our state right now, and with all the division amongst the school districts and everything, that if we could get somebody qualified from Illinois, that would be preferable.
I think we're looking for a very specific person, and I think we need to have the biggest possible pool to find them.
I would agree with that.
So just from the standpoint of equal opportunities commissions and that sort of thing, you want to be able to say that you have at least cast the net as widely as possible, that, you know, you haven't eliminated anyone from any
For personnel
particular state,
reasons.
which means, you know, you are open to having people. Doesn't necessarily mean when we get down to the nitty-gritty that we can probably tell you tonight that most of the candidates who are going to apply are going to be people from Illinois, though not all of them. And as I mentioned, these days, because some of the surrounding states have taken local property taxes go to the state with the promise that those dollars are going to come back to the districts dollar for dollar, and certainly hasn't happened in some of the states, which means that there are some very good people in some of those states where public education has been compromised, who will be looking to come to Illinois.
I've always heard that Illinois is a tough sell, though,
Yeah.
bringing educators in because of the pension funding problems and things like that, and not in your experience?
Not in our
Be the
experience.
only traffic into Illinois these days, but yeah.
Especially compared to, as like Harry said, some of the other states,
Because of the way they're funded.
because of the way they're funded.
Well, the year,
Are still there.
the year I was hired here, there were probably 5 superintendents, including Mike Semick, all coming from Michigan.
And when we did your interviews, we interviewed, I think, 2 people from Wisconsin, if I recall.
One from Minnesota.
Yeah, 1 Wisconsin, 1 Minnesota. Yeah. All right.
So to cast the net nationally, as Harry had mentioned, the online Ed Week, we're also proposing AASA, which is another widely read journal of educators, superintendents across the country. And then to do a job class, the district were interested in those 3. I'll get the School Exec Connect website in just a moment. That amounts to approximately $1,200 total, which again, given the scope of the importance of this role, is not a significant amount necessarily to get that national presence and advertising for your district. The School Exec Connect website is one that is free. We post that. And actually, if the board was not interested in posting on AASA, the Illinois version of that, IASA, actually is a free publication or advertisement for us as well, for you.
Yep. Does anybody have any thoughts or concerns about any of that?
Say we take the recommendation.
I think we take the recommendation. We want the broadest reach, and I'm sure it goes without saying that bullet number 5 would be you guys contacting people in your I'm gonna use an old word, in your Rolodexes and doing that kind of thing as well, right?
We will be recruiting, yes.
Yeah.
But they will not be using their Rolodexes most likely.
I hope not.
Okay, community engagement, focus groups. We'd like to identify, if possible tonight, the focus groups that you're interested in having. We can talk, when we get to scheduling, we can talk more specifically about when, but we would suggest, since this is a small school district, two-school district, that we have one meeting with teachers, support staff at one school, one meeting with teachers and support staff at the other school. So we would suggest meetings in those separate schools.
Does it make sense to you to have support staff in the same meetings with teachers?
Could be. In our district, they all work together.
It's okay? It's
Yeah,
collegial enough?
I don't see.
It's actually a good question. In some places, they're not as collegial
Yeah.
as we'd like to see them.
I wouldn't want anybody to feel intimidated while they're, sharing their feelings, so.
I don't think we have any intimidated staff members here, so I don't think that's an issue.
All right.
And really, they're very collaborative, so I think to separate them out would probably be insulting.
Okay.
And then administrators, we'd like to have, probably do that during the day, during or after administrative council or cabinet meeting, whatever you call it.
Now, we do have, one of our principals is also retiring. Would you like her to be part of that, or just the administrators that would be here?
I guess in that case, I would leave that up to your discretion as to whether or not you think it would be,
Okay.
it would be good for that individual to be part of it.
Okay.
This probably would take place in September, and being that it's then, you may be comfortable inviting them,
I-
and maybe not.
I think she would add to it. She's been in a couple other districts and worked with several superintendents, so I actually think
include
it'd be
her, yeah.
beneficial, so.
Do too.
So, yeah, the administrators would be a group, and then, do you have a parent organization, a district parent
Like a
organization?
PTA?
We have two. We have a
PTO?
PTO and we have a foundation.
Okay.
And you could either put them all in one group or have individual.
You could
How do
put
you
them in
feel
one
about?
group.
Yeah, I think one group,
One group for,
Do they have officers typically, and
yes.
Yes.
Anne used to be the president.
I'm still the president of the PTO until June 15th.
but who's counting the days?
I
Yeah.
also think that you've got to remember, we've got, on top of the administrators, we have 4 other district office staff that somehow need to be included somewhere. And I think we have custodians, and I think they need, and lunch, we have a couple lunch people. Who else? They may not, we'll have to see how that all plays out, but we definitely need to get the custodians in somewhere too. So,
You guys are going to interview board members individually, or focus group for board members, or you're about to go there, and
Yeah,
I'm
that's
too
one.
I'm too impatient, sorry.
no, that's one of the decisions tonight. And again, we've done it so many different ways depending upon how the board has recommended. Most of the time, we do focus group like this, and we could do it, before or after one of your board meetings.
That would be a closed session thing, right? Would that be closed?
If we were all together.
I think for what they're gonna be doing, it would be closed.
Yeah.
So we could do that either before or after a board meeting with the whole board. I will say there have been some boards that have said, and I don't know if I should editorialize on this, but a lot of times when boards aren't getting along very well together, they don't want to do it together. So
That way,
they,
can we do phone
you
interviews,
know,
separate phone
they
interviews?
want us to
In both ways.
interview them
I-
individually.
You know, I think this
Probably
board is
because
extremely collaborative, even with our two new people, and I think that that sends a strong message also to an incoming superintendent that they work together.
Yeah.
Different opinions may be expressed during the focus group.
Absolutely, I don't think we'd have to worry about people not
No, yeah.
expressing their opinions.
We've always,
Shrinking.
yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
way to do it.
Will you speak up,
Um,
Julie?
You have to think about community groups now,
Yeah,
too.
we do need to include community groups. And I also had a request from the president of the Lake Forest High School Board to be included somehow.
So
Like, do we include our feeder, people from our, anybody from our feeders, the school we feed into, as a separate focus group or part of a focus group, or?
So one of the things that we do for groups like that aren't particularly specific to the district is we hold, you know, various, sometimes it's called the open forum, sometimes it's called an open community meeting. So for anyone who isn't part of the specific focus groups, we will hold an evening meeting for anyone and everyone who wants to come. So a lot of times sometimes it's the chief of police, fire chief.
See, I would do a separate group. You know, we're so small, and these are people I work with often, you know, the village administrator and the village president, the library person,
Park District.
the park district. I mean, these are people that I really think should be part of,
Is there a
they should
minimum
have their
number?
own group.
Who you should have, who you don't think you should have fewer than X number of people to form a focus group?
Because, again, we've held meetings where, in very large districts, where we thought there were going to be tens, sometimes hundreds, and, you know, it's just been a handful of people who have shown up. So we really don't have any maximum or minimum.
Okay.
Depends on the district and the people you want included, and that.
I think that group is gonna need their own
I-
special time.
I would agree. I
You
think they
could
should.
easily put the Lake Forest board president and superintendent in that group, but they're all major stakeholders that we
Yeah,
work with.
Do you meet with a group of them on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Do you have a quarterly meeting potentially?
I have meetings
or-
with every single group. The whole first year I had to figure out what they all
We
were.
have had meetings with the different boards that sometimes falls between the cracks, but we've tried to
Been a while.
establish that, yeah.
I have separate, and then on top of that, I have a Lake Forest, Lake Bluff leaders that we could or don't necessarily have to include, which is the president of Lake Forest Hospital, the president of Lake Forest College, the Lake Forest superintendent, me, and the village manager here.
I meet
They
with
don't
the-
necessarily have to be.
I meet with the board presidents of the other two schools, Lake Forest, the two schools that feed into the high school, us and Lake Forest, and the high school board president on a regular basis, too.
Well, I just want to be sure that whatever feedback we get is weighted appropriately, so people that aren't really a constituency aren't just thrown in and given as much weight in their opinions as others.
I kind of think that there might be value to having a high school / District 67 group, just to get that kind of opinion. That might be actually useful information for us for other things, just to.
But are they your
Really?
community
No.
members? Because keep in
Yeah.
mind.
But this new super is going to work with this person, no, but this new super is going to work with these people on a daily basis.
Well, they're gonna,
But they're working for you,
yeah.
and therein, I think,
Yep.
may lie some of the difference. Just, again, some thought for consideration.
One related question, sorry, and apologies if I should know this, I haven't had a chance to review the contract, but do you two facilitate all the focus groups?
Yes.
And is there a limit on the number with our contract with you that we're allowed to have?
No.
Okay.
And by the way, we have one other member of our team, and that's Diane Rossi, my wife, who is also a longtime school administrator,
Okay.
who will be part of focus groups and interviews and everything. She couldn't be here tonight.
Sometimes because of scheduling, we may split off. Harold will do one and I'll do one at the
Sure.
same time. But it'll be us representing you.
I just want to make sure that as we're talking about these various groups, that we're not going over some focus group limit that I wasn't aware of. So.
We appreciate that. We try to keep it to a reasonable number, only because you can only receive so much input. Granted, all input is good, but you want the most valuable input from those who have the greatest stake in your district.
So to review, you guys have the staff at each school, and then you have the administrative team, the office and the custodians, because they all work with me as the superintendent, and then I'd have a partner group,
The board.
the board,
And then
however, what you're
local
gonna do that.
administrators, the Kathy O's, the Drew
I
Irvins,
would
the
call that the
Rossowskis.
the partner group.
Oh, okay.
I would call that the partner group. And then whatever else, whatever
Parent
other
group.
group.
There'd be a
Oh, the
parent
parent
group,
group, the PTO and the alliance, you could put together in one
And
group.
that would have been also parents at large, parents of any
Right.
students that may not be a part of PTO directly and or your foundation that are just welcome to.
I think it would be really nice, I don't know how we pull it off, but to get a group of non-users to be involved. I don't know how you get them in here.
We asked the people that we've worked with. You know, like Neil. Neil was part of our renovation. He's a non-user.
I mean,
John knows people that he you could bring your whole golfing buddy.
I don't think so. They're already in bed.
I mean, you said you would do a group that would be sort of at large,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
we might, who knows, we could supplement that with, you know, inviting by email certain people to come to it. You know, we'd really especially like to see you participate if you can, I don't know. If you want to get, you know, involved non-user.
I just want to make sure that because of our history, coming up through a time when non-users felt excluded from the schools, I don't want anybody in the town to feel that way.
Oh, but in this case, they have the same opportunity anyone else does to reply to these surveys and online.
Okay.
And if they want to become more involved, they come to the meetings
just
or
kind of-
speak out.
Right.
Maybe I'm gun shy
And we
from a historical
represent-
And that can
perspective.
go the
Theoretically.
reverse way also, right? Like, really, that's maybe more important in us vetting a superintendent candidate, that they're going to be willing to work with not just users, but non-users in the community at large.
See, there also is the value of the online survey, because if they cannot attend any of these focus groups, and it sounds like we're gonna be approaching, you know, roughly 8 to 10 focus groups, they can always go to the online survey and complete that as well. And respond to the same questions with discriminators and or open-ended, they can respond.
That seems to me like my number one suggestion then for, you know, in an edit on the survey do you currently have family and students in the schools? Or maybe age group, you know, which age group do you fall into or something like that to get a little bit of a demographic breakdown? Because, you know, whatever it is, it's 75% of our income comes from people who don't have children in the schools, so.
Would you?
We do disaggregate based on what you see there so far, so we've got community business members, which are the non-users.
And those surveys, the online surveys go out to our entire parent population? Have you done that, or what do you do with that? What do you recommend?
Depends how we coordinate that together, and if you have a parent listserv that
We
you
do.
can send things out to, you can simply send them the link, and they'll all have access to
We
it.
have
If
that.
you've got a non-user/community link, community members.
We don't have that.
But I
Through
think
the
we
village,
could,
the village board letter.
yeah, we can use the
Yeah.
villages, they'll help us with
Use
that.
the
They will
villages,
help
yep.
you, because they would help you with that.
Again, it's simply a link that they would click on.
I can
Yeah, that would work.
turn,
They would
twist
have
some
access
arms.
to that.
Let me know if you need your knees broken.
John's our enforcer. You notice the bent nose.
This is where we work closely with you as to how best to get the word out, because you know best.
Do we have a public relations person?
That's
Yeah,
Gene.
you're looking at all of us right here. Kevin does all our school messengers. It doesn't matter where he is, even on snow days. Kevin, you got to send out a
Which
message.
hat is that,
so-
Kevin? Is that the,
You can just text out the survey, Kevin. It'll be great.
It sounds to me like we've got all our groups. They may think of more groups after that.
Well, let's move on then to the schedule, so I'm gonna turn that over to Gary now to go through the schedule of when we're going to be doing things.
Shelley, you're gonna write all this down, right? So we've got it. Yeah.
So I'm now looking at what I believe was the second page of your, so we've gone out of order, so this actually is the test page. And as such, you will see that it has May 14th at the top, which is today's meeting date. So then looking forward to August and September, which we've touched base on already. So, for example, for placing ads on our School Exec Connect website, as soon as we have that template approved, we can put it on our website. We'd like to get that out there soon because we know that there are already candidates looking for jobs for 2020.
So if we got it to you in the next couple weeks, you put it up?
Absolutely.
I'll say then we'll set
Yeah.
something up soon.
And that we don't need to wait until August for.
Okay.
August is primarily for getting the word out through your district.
If I'm a superintendent looking for a job, that's a website I check weekly. And if I know it's coming up, it might help me prepare over the summer.
Although I don't think we need to approve the template. We've already discussed that.
We just want to make sure it's correct with the data that we have on there. That's when it has your per
The
student
template's
spending.
correct.
Yeah, the template's correct. We've given you the correction, so I would say put that
Yeah,
up.
we made the correction, so that can go up next week.
Yep.
Okay, and then we've already discussed that if the board can get together and look at that letter and the survey, then we could get those things posted in August and September respectively. Okay.
We should be able to get that done before the end of the school year. That shouldn't be a problem.
The survey would have corrected, and we determined that date. And again, Dr. Sophie, you know, here's where you'll know the flavor and climate of your district. Maybe right after Labor Day, make it active, only because up until Labor Day, I think parents are busy getting their students back to school, into routines and so on, that at that point,
The Wednesday after Labor Day.
Wednesday after Labor Day.
Yep, that's when I do it.
Which I believe will be September 4th.
We have our October board meetings, because I know we're moving on to that. We can give you the dates for those. It looks like,
So we've touched base on the focus groups. We're determining that it looks like it's going to be somewhere between 8 and 10. Just for your information, those we'd like to hold sometime, again, between Labor Day and roughly the 20th of September. Okay, in that 3-week window. Harry, Diane, and I actually come onto campus, and we try to schedule these. We'll be working closely with Shelley and Jean to do these in such a ways that we could combine as many in certain days as we can, just to prevent us from going back and forth every day, and combining them in such a way that we can hit as many of the focus groups as we can within that 3-week window.
do you do that on site, or do you do it, okay.
We do
So
it
our
on site.
conference room area would be a good place to do it.
Depending upon the size of the group that we would expect, for example, in your buildings, wherever your building typically hosts their staff meetings, for example, we would host them there.
Well, the only reason I'm saying that is if we expected a large group, we could not have it during a school day.
Sure.
If it was a group of 30 or less, we could use the district office conference rooms.
Sure.
Otherwise, there's not going to be any place in Lake Bluff during a school day for anything over 30.
Community room?
Unless here.
Even the community rooms over 30 would be crammed, don't you think?
You could-
I've seen more, like 50 maybe.
You can use my office, but it's Lake Forest. I don't know if that matters, but it'll
Yeah,
hold 60.
We don't cross those lines.
I figured, just wanted to offer.
And my guess would be that the groups that might be the largest would be the ones that you'd have to have at night anyway. So,
Those would be the parent meetings
Right.
for the most part, and again, our hope is that they will be fairly well attended. We can tell you what our experience typically is, that we have these great ideas and ideals that we're going to get throngs of people out. If your district, being please take this the right way, the sleepy district as it is, in other words, no major issues going on in your district.
Yeah, everyone's knocking on wood here.
If we got 10 to 15 people out, that would be a pretty good number, typically for parents.
I would suggest for your parent groups, you have 6:30 starts, because most of our parents work, and I would do one at the middle school and one at the elementary, and then whichever school they're closest to, that their schedules would align, have them 2 different nights.
Sure.
And usually, like over at our middle school, a lot of people like to walk to those meetings, so if you offer them 2 different nights, you're giving them 2 different options.
We'll also have to coordinate this, I would mention you've got back-to-school nights or curriculum nights or whatever you call your beginning of the year parent nights.
We have a lot going on in September already.
Exactly, yeah. And again, it's fairly typical, so we try very carefully to coordinate this in such a way as to not negatively impact their schedules, yet at the same time get them while they're in the fresh mode of coming out to their schools. Also, these focus groups typically don't take more than 20 to 30 minutes. So again, we'll coordinate that with Shelley and Dr. Sophie as to when we'll meet with which of those groups. And then we'll be looking at a date to cut off the online survey. And if we're starting the online survey the Wednesday after Labor Day, which is September 4th, probably around September 30th, the end of the month, that would give people ample time to have visited the online survey if they so choose. By that time, we also expect that our focus groups would be completed, so then we can collect all of that data and develop the profile, which we'd like to share with you at the October board meeting.
We have October 8th, which is the better one, and October 29th.
Okay, we prefer October 8th, if that
We do
works
too.
with your schedule.
We prefer that also.
Again, that would be a regular open meeting. If you don't mind being scheduled first on the agenda, that's possible. And then we would spend approximately 30 minutes sharing with the board the data. You'll also have the data in writing and sharing with you then the overall superintendent's profile that we have determined based on the data that we collected. Okay? So, after that meeting then on October 8th, during October, we'll also be very busy recruiting, accepting applications, screening candidates, and interviewing candidates, so that hopefully then by sometime early in November, we would like to then schedule a meeting with the board where we would present to the board a slate of candidates that we feel best meet the profile that's been developed. Typically, it's somewhere between 6 or 7 candidates that we have a closed session meeting, probably in a room similar to this, where we would go through with the board, each candidate giving you the highlights of their background, why we felt that they were quality candidates for your search, and why we believe you should spend the time to interview them. Okay? So
Can you
that's
do
called a
that?
screening meeting.
You could do that at the district office?
Yep.
And Tuesdays are typically good for this board, and we only have one board meeting in November on the 12th, so maybe you could pick one of the other Tuesdays. You guys could check your schedules on that. Maybe the 5th? I purposely did it that way, so that you guys could have another meeting.
Now, I also want to remind you, do many of you participate in the Triple I Conference?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
We're talking about that in June,
that
but
month?
it's the same month. That's the one Andy and Ann, I talked to you guys about the week before Thanksgiving, which is why it's probably better to do it November 5th if possible. Because otherwise, that November 19th week gets crazy.
It's the early this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That triple I is the weekend of,
First is the Triple I Conference.
oh,
That's a lot of nights out, but that's up to
21st?
you guys.
it's the 21st is triple I?
Hold
I
on.
believe that's the first day. Yes.
Yes. The 22nd, that Friday is when it starts.
And our board meeting is on the 19th?
No, our board meeting
Oh,
is the week
12th, there it
before
is.
on the 12th.
Yeah.
So you guys could do the 5th or the 19th.
I'm indifferent either way.
I can't do
I'm
the
gonna
5th.
say not the 19th.
5th doesn't work or does? All right, so 19th. How does the 19th look? It looks great for everybody, right?
Sorry, 19th of
November.
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 That's when we're presenting agenda.
5th or 19th?
Consensus?
19th's okay with me.
November 19th?
Yeah,
November 19th. Going once or twice?
19th.
November 19th. And that's a closed session, because that's personnel.
Session. Typically about 90 minutes,
Evening, I assume, like a 6 PM kind of start?
whatever's most conducive to you.
6 to maybe 7:30 or 8?
Yeah.
Yes, for dinner? We'll have dinner.
What time?
6, and there's dinner at the time. You
And
can
John
help
will
us.
get cookies.
What's on- at the menu?
We'll talk to you about the menu. Got it.
Okay? What time did we say for a start time of that meeting?
6.
6. Okay, so then, on the calendar in front of you, it says mid-November, but at this point then we're looking at
Right.
early December, and we'd be looking at the board's first interviews with these 6 or 7 candidates. And you can see that we've got different time slots, just as examples as to how boards typically do this. But we typically recommend that the board spend a minimum of 1 hour with each of the 6 or 7 candidates over the course of either 2 or 3 days, depending upon what works best for your individual and collective schedules.
And just,
Based on the fact that Thanksgiving is when it is on the 28th, would recommend that it be sometime that first or second week of December, which would be the week of December 2nd,
no,
if possible.
yeah.
So you guys have weeknight days you can do it, you can do it Saturdays.
Do you recommend
can
doing
do-
it back to back?
We typically
Like
recommend
2 days?
doing them in close proximity of each other, only because you're going to be interviewing 6 or 7 different candidates, so that you can kind of remember, if you do it over the course of a
that
couple of
Saturday?
weeks,
We did
all of a
that,
sudden, water
we did it
started
Friday,
getting a
Saturday.
little bit.
I think we did an evening the night before, too.
I think the other piece of advice I would give you is there are a lot of superintendent openings next year. And the pool of really great people, a lot of people will be interviewing. So the earlier you do it,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are on the same exact time schedule as we are. So the earlier you can get it in December, so that the choice is made that they're coming to Lake Bluff before they commit somewhere else.
So can we do December 6th in the evening and December 7th during the day, something
Yeah.
like that?
I would just say also, thinking back to when we hired Dr. Sophie, just so the board knows, it's not fun really on a Friday night and a Saturday morning, but it's just is the part where we gotta just kind of suck it up and get it done.
I don't know, you interviewed me in the afternoon, so I wasn't one of those.
Wasn't it back to
2
back
o'clock in the afternoon.
on a
It
Saturday?
was hot, that room was hot.
Oh, it was terrible. We were locked in there for days on end.
Yeah, but it's just, we gotta get it done, so.
This didn't come up when we decided to run, actually.
I know, right?
They slide food under the chair every
We're already
couple hours.
sworn
I was
in,
told there's very
sorry.
little nighttime stuff.
Just the first of many
I'm
things.
assuming, with all due respect, Andy, if you do your job right, it won't have to be done
Right.
during your next terms.
Fair enough.
You want a lifer, you gotta hire somebody in.
Yeah.
Yeah, lifer.
So the,
6 and 7
the
is
6th
fine
and
with me.
7th?
Yeah, okay with me.
6th and 7th.
So
Then you'd be looking at
December's,
doing 3 each of those days. Would you like to do 2 on Friday night and 4, let's say, on Saturday? And if there are 7 candidates, maybe going 3 and 4, possibly.
yeah, sounds good.
And we're sold that Friday, Saturday's the way to go here?
I don't think it's gonna be fun.
The
but-
majority of
but-
mine
But
were
we wanna
Friday
be
and
close together
Saturdays.
so we have a frame of reference when we're comparing
What would
everybody,
you
I think.
prefer?
Well, if we did it a couple consecutive evenings, that might be better.
Rich,
But
for
you're
the-
allowing like an hour, what are we allowing per person, like an hour and 15
An
minutes
hour,
or
And then
Couple minutes between.
15 minutes in between.
debrief?
When we did the library, we did
got them scheduled an
evening,
hour and
we didn't do
15
a
minutes
weekend.
apart on these examples that we've set forth in front of
I
you.
wouldn't mind spreading it over 3 nights, that'd be easier. If you- So
It's
some
just-
two, I mean, 3 or 4 gets pretty dense in any one night.
Also, we provide you with questions, obviously you can come up with your own questions as well, and we'll address that aspect of the search when we meet with you on that, at that 2-hour meeting, when we present the slate.
Why can't we do
Interviewing.
Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday?
If that's what you guys prefer, I'm flexible.
Well, it depends on how
What's
many
the date
candidates
on
we have. If
Thursday
we have
night?
8 candidates.
Thursday's the 5th.
Yeah, I can't do the 5th.
I gotta say, being gone 3 days in a row for me is kind of tough. I'd rather stick it into 2 if we could.
Same.
Yeah, if we're still gonna have a
Ditto.
Friday, Saturday, we might as well just not disturb the Thursday, too. That wasn't the outcome I was driving at, but, okay.
Friday,
It
Saturday?
is what it is.
I think you're
6,
gonna,
7.
Friday, Saturday, I think you'll see the best in of the candidates, rather than during the week.
Yeah, plus if somebody is coming from out of town, it's gonna be hard for them to travel for that, right?
Okay.
The other thing is they will know by November 19th, so they can make the appropriate arrangements to make sure they can.
Shelley, can you send the board invites to all these things that we're talking about, so we'll
Yep.
get them on our calendars?
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so then once you've held those interviews, the board then typically would happen after the last interviews, unless you'd like to schedule another day just to come back and discuss. We'd like to select from those 6 or 7 candidates. We ask that the board narrow it down to 2 or 3 candidates who then become what we call your finalists for your position.
So this is a
You can either do it-
preliminary.
So you could either do it,
At dinner, you guys took me to dinner.
Sounds good.
That Saturday when you're finished interviewing, if you're up to it.
That would be the time to do it.
Or some say, you know, let's take a recess, let's
That might be
reconvene
better,
early
too.
that following week and have that conversation.
Let's see,
When's our
we
December meeting?
may have a board meeting. Hold on just a sec.
December,
Actually, if you guys waited till the
The te-
following Tuesday
the
to kind of
10th?
process,
and have a closed session and do that
yeah,
on the 10th?
that's how I do it.
Wanna
Because
do
you're
that?
going to want to process through after 2 heavy days of interviewing.
Let's do that.
Some
So,
boards do, some boards don't. Some say, you know what?
I know
we're all
these
fresh
guys.
in our minds, you know your board best, how best they work.
They're going to need to
we
process.
might be fried after 7, all that. Is that okay with people? Come back on Tuesday and
You have a meeting anyway.
Yeah, I think that's ideal.
Tuesday the 10th?
Tuesday the 10th.
I mean, we're gonna schedule
Right.
them, so we've got a few minutes in between anyway, right, to sort of,
Absolutely.
yeah, so.
Okay.
Well, typically, we encourage people not to talk about the candidates in between.
Oh,
Only because that can sway how you look at the next candidate.
okay.
And again, we encourage you, as we're talking about the interviewing process, to meet the candidate, to have your comments down. We give you a protocol where you can take notes on these candidates. And then, not until you're finishing all the candidates do you begin conversing about the
That's how we
candidates.
do for interviews too.
So
Here.
the goal,
It's just a fairer process to all of the candidates. If you're the first person, you start talking about who they are, first, different dynamics occur for the second person, which then can occur for the third person, and so on. And again, boards typically can do what they wish, however, to try to keep the process as clean as possible. That's what we encourage. The 15 minutes in between is not only to change out candidates, but for you to catch your breath. Check
Go to
your
the
phone,
restroom.
make sure everything's fine at home, and then get ready to start.
So, and then on the evening of the 10th, the goal is to narrow that group down.
To 2 to 3.
2 or 3.
But so here's my question, because back mapping.
Sure.
I have a meeting scheduled for the 10th, and then I scheduled an extra meeting next year for the 17th, hoping we could name a superintendent on the 17th. So if we were going to do that, I mean, I know it's a tight schedule. It takes a while to negotiate the contract, too. So we may not, and I personally think it would be a good idea to get this person named before
Before the break.
break.
Why is that?
Because there are going to be there's so many openings this coming year. There's a lot of people retiring this year.
Just theoretically, you get better candidates if you're resolving it at the early part of the search process.
If I'm interviewing for Lake
10
Bluff,
districts, if we want to be one of the first of those 10 to
you want to
have
get
it
the best
locked in.
candidate and lock them in. Because I might be interviewing for the 2 top positions. And then
If you're the
I'm going
best
to go,
candidate, you get an offer from school B, you may not want to wait 3 weeks
I'm not
to
going
hear
to,
from us.
I'm
You wanna give
risking
an
it,
answer. Yeah.
waiting, because you may not ask me then. So I would go with the first one. And this year, it happened in a few different searches where the district lost out on the candidate that they may have really wanted
Because they didn't go fast enough.
because they were all in the same search cycles.
Yep, that happened a couple of times.
Well, do you think we
Searches
should-
we were involved in just this past year.
Do you want to suggest that we move this back a week and
Can we
go
figure out a way to
faster?
slide those interview days back from the 6th
Do
and
it
7th?
We gotta
Before
move them back
Thanksgiving?
2 weeks though, then, yeah, because
Yeah.
the week before is Thanksgiving.
And then the week before Thanksgiving is the triple I.
So
On the
then we're
weekend,
at,
yeah.
like, the
Which I know you said
15th.
the 5th wasn't good, ideally that week would be the week
To have the interviews earlier in the week.
to have us share those candidates, and then start that next week instead of 2 weeks later.
You mean the November 5th?
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
That would move the whole cycle up to 2 weeks.
Yeah, let's do that.
I thought we were talking about December 5th.
We were.
That was, if I'm messing up.
No, the
I'm sorry,
first
I was
meeting,
thinking
go back.
November 5th is when we were going to share the candidates with you,
Oh, okay.
and one of you couldn't make November 5th, so then we pushed it back 2 weeks to the 19th.
I think that might have been me, an error, because I have December 5th, I couldn't do it. But
Okay,
November 5th is
so-
fine.
November 5th would work.
So now we're back to
Everybody look at your
November.
calendars now. Does
Is that
November
okay with
5th
you
work?
too, Ann? Because you said,
I'm good November 5.
So let's present the candidates on November
5.
5. That's going to be, we're going to have our own meeting.
And then November 19, or that week, we do something with interviews? In the evening?
It's the week before Thanksgiving, so it'd have to be earlier, because a lot of
Oh,
people leave
if
town.
there,
Or
you
Or
guys
the next week?
could, how about, you could start interviewing the week of the 11th.
Correct.
Yeah.
You have a board meeting that week. But
That's good.
And then that gives us 2 weeks before
15th,
Thanksgiving.
16th.
That's much better than
November
December.
15, 16, for the Friday, Saturday interviews?
Okay with me.
I like that better.
November 15, 16, so that will be the group of 6 to 7. And then,
Then-
when are you going to get together to talk about the candidates?
We do not have a board meeting the next week.
So you could either stay on the 16th, or you could schedule a quick meeting at 90 minutes, you guys said, on either Monday, the 18th, or Tuesday, the 19th, or Wednesday, the 20th.
Do you guys need to be there, that meeting that we,
They're presenting the
no, we're talking about the meeting following the interviews where
Oh,
we decide.
okay.
Narrow it
We
down.
narrow it down to,
We don't, we could be upon your request.
If you want us to be there, we can work with you on.
I think, I seem to recall the last time we did this, we decided that day, that Saturday.
It might be a
After my
very clear
interview.
choice. It might, who knows?
I think we did too. I think we just,
Want to just
Gutted it
clear some
out.
time till Saturday, get it done on that Saturday after the interviews?
It's okay with me.
Saturday, the,
Okay.
16th.
Mark,
November
maybe
16th.
right after your last interview for lunch or
Yeah,
something.
or
so
we bring in lunch or something and talk about it while we're eating.
Or just take a complete break from that.
We all go for a walk in the woods and clear our heads or something.
Right.
I think we just did it, and I think it was, I think it
Sometimes
turned out
it
fine.
might shake
Right
out,
after my interview.
it might
'cause I
shake
got a call
out,
right
you know,
after.
sometimes these things are real clear, sometimes they're not, but. So
All
the
right.
15th, 16th, so we will get that done the 16th.
So now, at the end of the day on the 16th, we're down to probably 2 to 3. Then what's next?
That is correct.
So then we're back past, we're into December again for second interviews,
Correct.
right?
And
Because the week of the 20, Thanksgiving and the triple I. So, but we did have, we were talking about the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th.
You could even do the second, and you're only going to have 2 to 3 candidates this time.
So an evening, the week of the 2nd.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And you could do dinners,
How about the second?
but you could do
Okay,
interviews.
Let us also share this piece, and that is for your final interviews of the finalists, that's when we incorporate a stakeholder group, and that then typically is a handful of your teachers, a handful of your administrators, a handful of your parents, anywhere from 12 to 14 people in total, that right at the end of the school day, typically, we have them interview these finalists, and then when they're finished, roughly at 4:30, 5 o'clock,
You can see this.
then, yeah, we've got that scheduled tentatively there. The stakeholder group does not rank the candidates. The stakeholder group only provides input on the candidates so that the board is still left solely with the decision of selecting a candidate of their choice. The purpose of the stakeholder group is to just see how different eyes in the district view the candidates and for you to glean some input from them, from a teacher's perspective, from an administrator's perspective, parents' perspective, and community members.
How do they share that information with us?
Basically, they will fill out a sheet after they interview each of the 2 or 3 candidates. And just as I had mentioned here earlier, when they're finished interviewing the candidates, they don't talk as a group. They all individually write down. We've got a protocol that asks them specifically strengths of that candidate, any challenges that candidate may have. There's also a statement on there. Are there any other questions you think the board should ask this candidate before they were to offer them the contract? That gives you some input as to if you're questioning what you should be asking them in their second interview, you'll get some.
So you'll give us feedback before we go into that next round, that same evening, probably?
All from that whole committee. Let's say there's 14 people on that committee. You'll get 14 different sheets that time is built into the schedule for you to review that, so that when you meet with the candidate, you will know that.
Yeah.
And 14 would be a very large number for a district this size, 2 schools.
Do school, a couple things. When we interviewed for Dr. Sophie, I do not believe we had a community group.
I had nobody else.
So I would like to hear people talk a little bit about their feelings about that, pros and cons, and what, should we be doing that? I wonder if people have particularly strong feelings either way about doing that.
I think it's important to do it. I don't see any negatives, but I do see negatives if we don't. I think there's already people talking about wanting to make sure that they're included. I don't mean individuals, but I mean just making sure that there is a group of stakeholders that's involved in the process.
Unless the stakeholders all want one person and the board goes another way, and then the board doesn't know what they're talking
Our
about.
protocol
They
doesn't
don't
allow
get to
that
rank.
to occur.
So here's.
But do you tell them that?
So here's.
Because
the
some
way-
people might go into it thinking they have more.
No, they won't, because one or both of us will meet with whoever is designated by the board to be the chair of
Okay.
the stakeholders committee.
Yeah.
Typically, it's an administrator who is highly regarded, who is used to working with a group. And again, in a district this size, I'm not sure you need 14 people. You could have a couple of teachers from each of the schools. You could have a staff member, a support staff member from each of the schools, maybe a parent president from each of the schools, and that could be the group. I mean, you could add to that, but that would be a significantly sized group, a significant size of a group for a district this size. We would meet with whoever that chair is. They would have, believe me, they get a packet of information from us that we go over with that chair, and then the chair does that, and it's very specific about what their role is, which is we give them sample questions to ask, and then they have a sheet in front of them. They listen to the answers to the questions. They fill out the answers to these. They don't rank, because at the end of each one, they're going to be turning those in. So they will only have seen one person after the first day. They will answer, I think there were, 4 questions, maybe?
4 questions.
4 questions altogether about the people with whom they've met. They do not speak to each other before they fill that out. That then comes to you before you do, and then second day, same process. And then those sheets of paper come to you before you do your final interviews. So you have in front of you the notes of the people who have met with the candidates. And all they're doing is answering these questions about what they saw as the particular strengths of this person, whether or not person matches the profile that's been developed. Very general questions like that, no ranking at all, and because they're seeing them on separate days, it really doesn't allow for that.
Have you had clients, districts choose not to have community involvement, and tell me about their reasoning? Why did they choose to go that route?
Typically, the reasoning, first of all, I've probably done 75 altogether over all of the years that I've done this. It's just been a handful of districts that haven't decided to do it. Sometimes they've been such large districts that they've said, there's no way we're going to be able to satisfy
Sure.
people with the kind of representation that you're talking about. It'd be too large a group.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that would be one reason. There are some other specific situations in some districts where they just feel that the group might be out of control if they tried to do something like that. But by and large, it really does work very well. And the upside is that people feel as though their school, if it's in an elementary school, primary and intermediate, they've had a representative for each of those. It's the middle school, maybe it's the 6, 7, or 7, 8, however it's decided. Sometimes what boards just do is they say to the union leadership, pick 2 teachers from each of the schools that you want to be on. Usually they pick themselves.
Yes.
And, but, at least then they can say that
Sure.
they have had an opportunity to meet at least the final 2 possible.
So does anybody have any concerns about having a community group as part of this process? Like, we should not do it?
Only if it's delaying our calendar in a way that's significant.
I think it's very important to get feedback from the teacher group.
Yeah.
I feel less tied to getting full community input,
We
although,
only have 10 people or something like that, it's not gonna be that much.
Well, we're already getting that through the surveys and other aspects. So we've got focus groups in the beginning of this process, we've got surveys, we're gonna get plenty of community feedback.
but this is on the individuals.
No, I understand.
Right.
I also think there's value in
Yeah, there's no downside, is,
the optics of it as well.
Andy
It
said.
doesn't look bad.
right.
Well, yeah,
Mark, just remember, we're talking about teachers, support staff, parents on this group. So
Yeah,
they're all going to
sure.
be people who are direct stakeholders, not, in a large community.
I say we do it, and let's move forward with our dates.
Okay.
So we need, that would be date or days for final interviews?
Be on the same day.
Would we do them all on the same, all candidates on the same day, or?
No, you'd have to have a couple, 2 to 3.
Recommended is if you've got 2 candidates, 2 dates, there are 3 dates. So at this point, I'd recommend scheduling 3 dates. If we only have 2 candidates, then you have an extra day.
So like the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, something like that?
well, the seconds, everybody will have just gotten back from Thanksgiving break. I don't
Okay.
think that's a good date.
And you can't,
3rd, 4th, and 5th is fine, but
the 5th?
She can't do the 5th.
December 5th, I can't do.
You could do
What about 9, 10, 11?
3, 4, 6.
But if we get into 9, 10, 11, then does that give us time to be able to announce it on
Yeah,
the
I don't know.
17th?
I'd try to do 3, 4, 6, knowing that you may only be bringing back 2 candidates, and then you wouldn't have to do the 6th.
Yeah, 3, 4,
yeah,
6.
I might do 2, 3, 4 then, because Friday night's also a bad night to do it.
I'm okay with that, but
The
you were
Monday
concerned
after.
about the Thanksgiving thing.
Well, I'm just concerned people get,
Only because
it's a
people
hard
know
day.
about this easily 2
Yeah.
to 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
You can schedule it. The other thing is, with those who are involved in a stakeholder group, they're asked in advance to make sure that they're available on those dates. And if they're not, then they have to turn down the opportunity.
Is that good? 2, 3, 4?
Yes.
yeah, make 2 the alternate date, though. We only need
Yeah.
2 dates.
So
go
3,
3 and
4, 2 in order.
Yeah.
3, 4, 2.
3, 4, 2.
Like people have to travel if we have a
The times?
candidate from outside.
Okay.
They're right on here, Shelley,
We'll take a look, yes, on your sheet.
See 'em?
3:30,
Got it.
4:30. What time does school dismiss here?
At the elementary school, it's about 2:45, 2:50. At the middle school, it's about 3:35. So we're going to have to adjust that.
Yeah.
And probably the earliest you could start is 3:45.
Okay.
But I think those days work, so then the question is, after they do all that, what's the next step?
Well, and then the other piece of it is that upon the stakeholders interviewing and when they actually get before the board, does the board want the candidates to do a presentation in front of the board? Typically, this is something that we've been adding the last couple of years, only because your new superintendent's gonna be your district spokesperson. You wanna make sure they can stand in front of a group and present, and as basic as that may sound, some do it better than others. And that being the case, we typically ask candidates to prepare a 15-minute presentation on some topic, either that the board would like them to speak to, specifically related to education, or one of the alternatives that boards have asked candidates to do is just speak about something in education, about education that they're passionate about. Gives you a little bit more insight into who they are, what they're passionate about, and how well they can present that.
I want to know how these present.
Yeah, I like
that.
Oh, yeah.
Me too.
Okay.
Agree.
Okay. And then from the presentation, then typically it's a board dinner. And again, once upon a time, boards, and maybe you experienced this in the past, for those of you.
You could pick the
who
restaurants,
interviewed
too.
Dr. Sophie, I don't know if you went out for dinner.
We went out to
somewhere.
dinner.
There is a little bit of a trend developing where districts are saying we don't even want to go out in public.
Closed.
We'll cater dinner in,
Lake
and we'll
Forest
stay
has outdoor
inside,
seating.
and then you don't have to worry about visibility,
was a good
or
restaurant.
privacy or confidentiality.
Such a small town, if you go around
What's
here,
the name of
we're
the
going to know
restaurant?
somebody no matter where we go.
It's called
Even if you go
MLG
nearby
now.
outside of
Yeah,
town,
MLG.
chances are you'll run into somebody.
I mean, we were
Did
in
we
a
do that?
we were in a private
We
dining room
were in a
where we
private
went.
room, which I appreciated, because no one could see us.
Did we
And
do that?
we weren't in Lake Bluff, so that probably,
Did we do that with more than one candidate, or was it just? Dr.
yeah, we
Sophie?
did.
We did.
Yeah, remember that guy? There were at least two of them.
That guy we didn't choose.
So the board is taking that
Very
into
unusual.
consideration Because that will be taking place in December.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
just to be thinking about, if there is a place somewhere nearby that has a private room, or if you'd like to just cater it inside.
You can go to a
and,
private club.
Keep the candidates
Pardon me?
inside.
You can go
It
to a private
abbreviates the
club.
process and
Norwood.
prevents people
We could
from
do
having
that.
So when we block off our calendars, we'll just block off a big chunk to,
There's always Panera.
we'll really impress the heck out of our candidate.
In your case, it'll be typically from 5 o'clock at night
That's actually
till about 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
on those
That would be
nights.
perfect.
What night are we talking about?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 2, 3,
Wednesday
4.
or Monday.
December 3,
Monday's
4.
not open.
Lots of restaurants are closed on Mondays, actually.
I'm sure we'll make it work.
Somebody will find a private room somewhere.
Wednesday.
So then what?
Okay, moving along,
So
moving
then
along.
After that, then the board, again, is gonna have to either determine at the conclusion of the second or third interview, or schedule another date to meet to discuss who they'd like to offer a contract to.
Which
So
we have a
that's-
board meeting the following Tuesday, but
Oh.
I think that's running late. And
We're looking to work backwards and name somebody on the 17th. Ideally, if you could know by Friday of that week.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say
If the
too.
meeting,
Well, we have a meeting on the
By
10th. though.
Friday the 6th.
Right, but you really need to know the 6th, because by the time you are negotiating, that's at least a week-long process.
So,
8 to 10 days.
so then we have to have a meeting on the 6th, a closed session on the 6th. Because the 5th doesn't work.
Can we not play that by ear? Why don't we see where we are Wednesday night? Maybe we'll all have a consensus by that time, and then,
Because what we do,
Like a sore
maybe,
thumb, just
yeah.
well, we do have a posting requirement. So post for the 6th, we do have to post, what, 48 hours in advance or something like that?
We can wait till the week before.
Or you can just post it, get it on your calendar now, and then if we don't need it, we cancel it.
It's easy to drop dates later. I think
Yeah.
the point now is to try and have it
If we can resolve it on the 4th.
on the calendar.
Why don't we?
Okay.
So let's put something on for the 6th, and we'll cancel it if we can.
What time it's a Friday night, what time do you guys want to meet?
Oh, I'm sure we'd love to be here on the Friday night.
Terrible.
As early as possible.
I agree, as early as
I
possible.
mean,
What's the earliest?
Wait,
We got people coming from downtown, so you tell me, because we'll put it on, we can always cancel.
Well, why don't we put that, we'll decide that in November. Can't we take a look and see where we are in November? And everybody's schedules then? We don't have to decide that tonight. We can't
That's up to
decide
you
that. I have
guys.
no idea what I'm gonna
I
need
usually
to
go out,
be doing
honestly,
December
I usually go out
6th.
of town those few days, so I'd like to know ahead of time. I don't have to know today, but I'd like to know. ahead.
I'd say also, here's another thing, Friday night, or you could do Saturday morning, a 9 to 10 meeting.
That's big party night,
That's better.
Christmas party night.
It is a big Christmas
That's
party,
better.
actually.
That's true.
Saturday, Sunday.
It's a terrible time.
Saturday morning at 7?
No.
Saturday the 7th.
That works for me, actually.
My kids aren't that little anymore, so I don't get up at 5.
How about Saturday the 7th at like, from 9 to 10?
9 to 10?
That's
Do
Pearl-
that.
Pearl Harbor Day.
And then that's a good day to call candidates.
Let's do that. Is that okay with you guys?
Where do we land on the 7th?
December 7th,
At
9
9
a.m.
o'clock.
So when you say call candidates, are we gonna have to have an offer prepared at that time? I mean, when do we
That's up to
decide what
them
the
to tell
terms
you.
of the offer are?
Through the process, we will also have discussed contract and having a template available. By that time, as you get down to your final 2 or 3 candidates, you will have ranges of salaries that these candidates that are your finalists will have. And from there, as you are in closed session, as you're looking at candidates, you could develop some parameters as to what you'd like to offer to candidates. So that after you've made your decision, you could let the candidate know that we'd like to offer you a contract. Details will be forthcoming as soon as possible thereafter.
Yeah, they didn't talk to me money when I got my initial offer.
And they're going to need some time to, because they're going to go to their attorney and have it reviewed and maybe come back, and there might be some negotiation, and so.
Typically about,
Typically, it's not about the salary, though, when the lawyers get involved. The lawyers are usually looking at things other than what the salary is. Usually that's the agreed upon part of it, and then the lawyer will look at certain language on both sides. You should, which firm do you use?
We use Hodges.
Hodges.
Cindy DeCola is our attorney there,
Cindy. She's done this.
a million times.
Yeah. So just give your attorney a heads up. A lot of times what districts do ahead of time is board members will look at the current superintendent's contract, have everyone take a look at it, and see if you want to use that as the template that you're going to be offering for the next superintendent. Sometimes there are things that have been put in specifically for that person that you might not want to have for someone
Mine
else.
is pretty
just because
boilerplate.
of specific circumstances.
Would-
But,
Sorry.
yeah, so that's something that your attorney should be looking at, and you can easily take a look at Gene's contract at any time and take a look at that and see what you think also.
Do you get involved in that at all, like saying the trends in the industry typically are having this clause or that clause not in there, or this in there, or is that more the lawyer's role?
That's more attorneys, don't you think?
that's more the attorneys. What we will provide for you on your finalists is what their current package includes, so that you'll have an idea of what they're getting, salary, TRS, benefits, et cetera, vacation time, so that as you're looking at them as a potential candidate, how what you might be offering will match what they have or what you may need to do
Yeah.
to make it.
Okay. So we need to have a closed session where we talk contract and we get a copy out in front of
Cindy-
everybody, and,
You might want Cindy to come out for that, based upon if you have enough questions.
okay.
You may not. It's a boilerplate contract, so.
So we need to schedule, so sometime, when do we need to have a contract? Do we need to have that with those original 6? Are they gonna be asking questions about a contract? Or when we only do final?
Well, the finalists.
Just final.
And you could have that in a closed session meeting to review.
So
the
if we have,
contract,
if we have the final contract, a boilerplate contract by the end of November, because we're meeting with the finalists December 2, 3, 4, so.
Don't forget, too, we really want to have a 10-day posting period once the contract's done, because we've been consistently doing that.
Okay. All right,
Then you're
so,
perfectly on schedule to present your candidate on December 17th.
We might have
if
to
the
move it.
negotiations aren't too crazy.
We might have to move that date, depending on how fast it gets done. the board that hired me followed what the new law was at that time. They didn't know it applied to IMRF, they just did it across the board. So all of our administrator contracts have been posted for 10 days prior to vote. And so that is something we've been consistent with and followed, which might mean that you might have to move the
We're not gonna be able
December
to do that.
17th to the December 19th. Remember, you're just naming the superintendent. It's not like it's a one meeting that night.
Could it, okay. When's the next meeting after the 17th? Not till January, right?
January.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get a signature on those contracts in December somehow.
Definitely want to try to do that.
Okay. Does the board have any other questions or comments for Harry and Gary?
What happens if we don't find somebody we think is the right person?
Yeah, that would suck.
And you tell us you haven't found the right person, and we'll recruit some more candidates for you.
What does that do to our timeline?
Well, depending upon, obviously, you would be telling us that on November 5th, so we would immediately start, re-looking for candidates to try to keep your timeline in place. There are going to be a lot of people, this is going to be such an attractive position that I don't see that as a problem, but
Good.
if you should not appreciate the candidates that we brought, we'll bring some more to.
So that's November 15, 16 is when we do the first meeting? Yeah, that's the first interviews, and November
5th is when he presents the slate.
Right, so to answer
November
your
5th,
question, we'll
right.
give us 10 days then to.
So I would ask, and I think it's in the contract too, that you guys and myself and Dr. Sophie, at least by phone, or if not face-to-face, have a conversation before we present candidates to the board, that we can do a little pre-screen, just to give our
I
give our
usually
2
would
cents.
not be involved in that piece,
Oh,
but
you need to be involved.
Why is that? Why would you not be involved?
I told you before, I'll do whatever you need to do. I will not be part of the interviews, though.
That's fine.
That is inappropriate for a superintendent to sit in on replacement interviews, but I'll help you with everything else. Whatever you guys want help, I'll help.
We can do it how we want.
Theoretically, the person in the job right now might have blind spots as to what other skills or talents could be brought in.
Sure.
So you,
And I have major blind spots.
not saying Jean does, but that's, why they would.
I personally think it'd be important to just have a chance to review before we present to the entire board, for us to have a conversation about it. Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns?
Don't be concerned, it's all gonna go very smoothly. Everything is gonna be fine. We've got a lot of consistency in the school district. We have the same team next year for administrators. We have high achievement. None of that's gonna change as you go through this very important search. It's
I
gonna
have
be
one
very
question
calm.
for you, if I may ask.
Of course.
With you kind of knowing the market, do you have in the back of your mind, a list of 4 or 5 people you think could fit in here pretty well?
You mean tonight?
Yeah. Okay.
No, because, again, we really don't know enough about your district yet to answer that. We could tell you who some of the good superintendents who are out there, but we don't know if they're looking for jobs. So we'll start recruiting once we have a really good idea about what, profile looks like. And we don't have a stable of candidates.
Okay.
And we pride ourselves on not doing that, we're going to try to find the best people to fit.
I just didn't know what the market was, if
Well,
that's
for a
something you-
district like this, we would expect that there'll be somewhere close to 40 candidates for this job. I'm not suggesting that all 40 of them legitimate candidates based on qualifications, resume, et cetera. But you're going to have a significant number of good candidates just because it's a great district.
I just, something about what you just said triggered a conversation I think the board also needs to have on the advertisement, whatever you call that, that letter that goes out, that like the very first thing we agreed on. Is the board set on the next superintendent at District 65 needs to be a sitting super, or are we willing to consider somebody who has not been a superintendent? And do we need to declare that in?
Not need to declare that. In fact, we would suggest you don't declare it. You want to try to keep the pool as open as possible. And while, you know, it's great to find a sitting superintendent, there are also some really outstanding associate superintendents, assistant superintendents who are out there who are certainly ready to take on the challenge.
So don't limit ourselves.
We'd recommend.
That's
that
what I
we
would say
keep it
too.
open.
Does anybody feel differently?
No.
Okay. You guys need anything else from us?
No,
No, you need anything else from us?
yeah.
I'm sure we will.
No, very good.
Thank
for
you.
a productive evening. Thank you.
Yeah, and don't hesitate to reach out for whatever you might need from me. Appreciate it. Thanks for your help, guys.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Jay, you want to come on up? We're going to
We're
get
gonna
started
rock
right
and
away.
roll.
Jay, I'm gonna quickly text my sitter that I won't be home at 8 o'clock, if you give me a second.
Most of it goes very fast, though, so.
You might be surprised.
You think it's 7:47?
Yeah, but we're gonna power through this.
All right.
I've asked Jay during this, I asked Jay to go through the fast, all the May approvals are fast.
High points.
So he's going to go through the May approvals first and then go back and do the amended and the parameters.
All right, so we're going to begin our discussions. We just
There you
finished
go.
School Exec
Perfect.
Connect. Now we're going to talk about our amended budget hearing, correct?
No,
No?
right now, we're going to do board approvals first and then go back.
Board approvals.
So
Yeah,
this is just a
that's-
list
Oh,
of
F,
things.
so we're
Yes.
skipping all the way down to F.
Because he's getting this, which seems long, but it's the shortest conversation. And then he'll go back up. So you're starting with annual business.
Yep, so these are board approvals that are done on an annual basis that you'll be seeing at the next meeting, so just to prepare you for that. There's the treasurer's bond, which is basically an insurance policy required, the state requires that the board take out on treasurers in the amount of 25% of all of the money of which I will have custody.
So you are the treasurer.
So I'm the treasurer. I was appointed, and I serve until you appoint a new treasurer. Then the property casualty renewal. We are a member of the Collective Liability Insurance Cooperative, which is a joint pool similar to our health insurance of 183 school districts. We are contractually obligated to make all the annual payments, but we bring this renewal to the board to be transparent and to just let you know what our insurance costs will be for the following year. This is a huge pool. It's $26 billion in assets, and it allows us to basically access insurance coverage that we couldn't afford to access on our own, and that's helped us significantly in recent years. Then there's a workers' comp renewal. This is a standalone policy that does require board approval. We have a separate insurance broker that sells us that policy, and that's something that's required by the state as well. Then annually you approve, based on board policy 4-30, the annual banking depositories. So our revenue investment policy requires that you approve all of our banking depositories. You'll also be approving a resolution for the Illinois School District Liquid Asset Fund, which is where we invest most of our money in between, most of our tax revenue.
The banking depositories, that's just, you were approving where you act, what banking,
You're approving the banks that we are going to use for our depositories. I'm also required to keep you informed of our collateral agreement, so that because you have one of your main duties is to safeguard the assets of the district. So this is one way that you do that.
A few years ago, we just moved everything over to Lake Forest, right? So is it still?
We're
gonna be
all at
the
Lake
same?
Forest Bank and Trust. We're not recommending any changes, correct?
But you still have to approve it every year.
Yeah.
We also, it's the school board's duty the school code requires the board to annually review serious safety hazards for bus routes. So those are determined based on IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation guidelines, and we will present those to you. We made some changes last year, but we're recommending that these hazards be reaffirmed for the current year. The only real use of these is for reimbursement purposes. The state would reimburse us for routes that are less than a mile and a half, for students, transporting students who live less than a mile and a half away from the school but have a serious safety hazard. And so they use that for reimbursement purposes only. And we get very little reimbursement, so it's sort of something that we just do annually.
The next one's my personal favorite.
Julie loves that one.
Prevailing wage, the district is required to pay all laborers the prevailing wages published by the Illinois Department of Labor for Lake County. And the Prevailing Wage Act requires all public bodies pass an ordinance or resolution establishing the prevailing wages.
So we're required for the new guys.
You are
we're
required.
Everybody needs to know we're
to pass
required.
this, but
ordinance.
it's state law.
The board
We
voted
voted it
against
down
it
a couple
2 years
times, but they
ago,
wouldn't let us do it.
and we had to come back and bring it back. So even though you vote on it,
Resistance
you
is
don't
futile.
really have a choice.
Yes.
Tricky.
So that's kind of the annual stuff that's recurring. And then we also annually do a lot of the contracts which will renew at the beginning of the fiscal year, if you wanted. So the contracts we have this year, the ECRA contract, this is a firm that helps us with our student data analysis. This is an auto-renewing contract, but we're bringing it to you for approval for transparency, or
I
just,
think, Jay, the other connection with that is we also have an intergovernmental agreement with Lake Forest High School to share our data between, and because they use ECRA also.
yes. We are changing flex plan vendors and updating our flex plan document, and so that in order to be recognized by the IRS needs to be approved by the board for next year. We have 3 contracts with Single Path that are renewing. We have an internet and firewall services contract, an on-site staffing contract. When 2 of our current tech support people retired, we filled those positions with contractors from Single Path, and we want to renew those contracts. They're performing very well, and we're happy with
Can
the
I
arrangement.
interject something?
Sure.
For next week, because we're talking ECRA, and I'm always hearing things about data sharing between the high school and us, can you guys address the question, does that agreement allow us to track the progress and success of Lake Bluff students at the high school? Is there,
We will answer that at the next meeting.
right, just something to bring up.
Yeah, what data are they sharing and how?
But we won't be discussing that until June, because Kevin is sharing data and strategic planning update in June, so that's when we'll
Okay,
hit it.
just as a heads up.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep, it's okay. And then the last, we have a managed services contract. Because we're so small and we don't have a big tech department, it's pretty much, as Gene said, right here. We outsource a lot of our tech services to Single Path, and that's a 3-year agreement that's expiring on June 30th. And we'd like to extend that for another 3-year contract at the same price. Then for our summer construction projects, we have the awarding of bids for the casework and the boilers that the board needs to do formally at the next meeting. We'll be approving a contract amendment with IHC to incorporate the summer work into our master agreement. And then we need to contract with Reagan Heating. Because they're a non-union contractor, IHC can't hold their contract, so we are going to hold the contract as a district. And we've drafted some additional agreements to accomplish that.
Just a reminder to Ann and Andy, IHC is our construction management firm,
That's who oversaw the project, the
our
middle school.
renovation, yes.
We did the middle
Right.
school.
So they'll be providing the
Is
same
it still
services.
Tom Carano? He's still the guy working?
Tom Carano, and they also hold, what Jay's referring to is, they hold all the bids and they kind of manage all that, that's part of construction management. But we have this one company that because they're non-union, we have to hold on to it, IHC will not,
And
so.
they're non-union, so we pay them prevailing wage.
Correct.
Because we
That's
have
the
to,
reason behind prevailing wage.
because we have to, Mr. Berry.
I know.
And then the food service intergovernmental agreement with Lake Forest School District 67 would need to be signed to have Quest provide our food services through Lake Forest 67 next year. We did learn that Lake Forest is being required to go out to bid or do an RFP for food services next year. They like their current vendor, and it's not a national school lunch program, so they have a lot of flexibility in who they select. It's not based on price alone, so we feel pretty confident that they don't have a strong reason to change, but they, as a matter of practice, go out and look at those vendors on a regular basis.
Because we had to make the decision, are we still going to move forward? It's time we move forward. We've already done all the legwork. We're ready to go. But when we found this out, we really needed to delve a little bit further, because what we don't want to happen is change companies and then change again the following year. But we feel confident that they're just doing it as a matter of practice to bid out, so. And that's it.
That's
And you'll see all of that
So these are
in
coming back next month.
May
At the end of the
28th.
month.
And there might be a couple of the technology ones in June. So all of these, because we don't have any more committee of the whole meetings this year, now you know what you're going to be approving ahead of time. So especially for our 2 new board members.
Yeah, and there'll be all the documents and explanations will be in the board packets in advance. You'll
So stay there.
detail.
The next thing you have to do is the date and time. Now we're back there.
Okay, so discussion item B, the date and time of the 2018-2019 amended budget hearing, which is going to be set for June 11th at 6:45.
Yes.
And that's because we're amending our budget because of all our legal expenses that exceeded our planned budget.
Correct. So when that happens, we legally have to amend our budget, and we are required to follow all the same procedures for the amended budget as for the original budget, which means having a tentative budget on display for 30 days, and then having a budget hearing and formally approving it.
So we will amend and approve the tentative one next meeting, and then it's on display? Is that how that's?
So it's already been on display.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't need to be approved, but we had to publish notice in the paper and display it for 30 days before we can approve it. So we posted it on May 10th so that on June 11th we can approve it.
What paper qualifies us? What do we use?
We
for
do, the board wanted us to do it in the Lake Forester, as well as the News Sun. So the News Sun qualifies because it's a general circulation paper, but the board felt that for transparency, the Lake Forester was more often read, and so we do it in both.
I think the other thing I would point out, on top of the legal expenses that we had, we also had several new outplacement for students that also put us in a situation to amend the budget. So we really were dinged a couple different times. And that's what is creating a not balanced budget, which again, I went through with a couple of you. That means our profile is lowered from, what's it, excellent to proficient, or what?
Well, so the budget is not, the amended budget you'll be approving is not balanced. Our total budget was not balanced this year because of the air conditioning project. What the state profile score depends on is our operating budget, which only looks at certain operating funds. That is also not balanced because there was a significant legal expense in Fund 10, but it's pretty close. So at the end of the year, we could still have enough favorability to cover that difference and not change our profile score. If we come in exactly as budgeted, it's on a scale of 1 to 4 or 0 to 4. We are currently 3.9, and it would lower us to 3.55. But we would still make the top bracket of recognition. So it wouldn't reduce us a rung on there's 4 categories. There's recognition, and then on the other side, it's like warning. So there's 4 different categories. We'd still be in the top category, but our score would be reduced if we came in as budgeted.
And when you display the numbers next week or whenever, the discrepancies, the variances will be clear to us?
Actually, if you look in your packet this week, all that stuff is in your packet, and I did a reconciliation of the two, so you'll see exactly what changed. It's primarily, I took it's the legal settlements, I took the hit on transportation for the added routes, and then I took some known revenue favorability to offset some of those things. And then because the auditors will be using this, I want to have it in the system, I've already made some small adjustments throughout the year for Alliance grants and things, so that when teachers receive grants, they have it displayed in their budget in Skyward, so those kind of fall through as well. But there's very few changes, and it's easily to identify.
So when this comes to your approval on May 28th, you're not going to get any more detail than what's already in there, because he already put that in. I think it's important to note, I'm going to remind everybody, the budget cycle as it is, you're voting on the amended 18-19. Tonight, you're going to see the parameters for 19-20. At the May 28th meeting, you're going to see the very first time you're going to look at the 19-20 draft budget. In June, you will vote on a tentative 19-20 draft budget. Over the summer, there's always changes. In August, you'll see the revised tentative budget. In September, you'll see it a couple times, and then you will make final approval for the 19-20 budget then. And then cycling back next spring, hopefully we will not be coming to you having to amend a budget for the same reasons as this year. And it starts all over
Then
again.
we'll start talking about levies.
And levies are in between. I will point out that along with our budget discussion at the end of the month, we always review our 5-year forecast, so you're going to start looking at the projections again. And we always review our fund balance policy, because those two things go together.
Right.
So now Jay is going to talk to you about the key assumptions for the budget before you start seeing all the numbers.
Just one other question. Incremental to what's displayed on the form here, there were incremental legal expenses. Were they spent out of funds that aren't recognized here, or how was that treated?
So the legal expenses were budgeted. It's purely the settlement that were not budgeted, because we didn't know if or when we were going to settle and for how
But
much.
we've already handled all the legal
So
expenses
yeah.
outside the settlement? Okay.
Correct.
And you will be, the key part with that is you will be reviewing what our fund balance, we're still in good shape with the fund balance, but you will notice a little bit of a difference when we look.
So in June, you'll be voting on an amended 18-19 budget, and then we also ask you to vote on the tentative 19-20 budget, so that when we start the year, we have an authorization to start spending money, and then we change it, and the final budget isn't due into the state until October, but we don't want to wait until October to show you a budget, because we're already one quarter through the year of spending. So these are the assumptions that are going into the 19-20 budget. This budget is, it's still in progress, and it's very tight. I'd say I'm still sharpening my pencil and looking for money. The assumptions we know what our property taxes are going to be based on the levy, and the county has already certified them. Our operating funds will go up 2.5%. And 2.1% of that is based on existing property, the difference being new property. And our debt service taxes are going up 1.3%. I'm budgeting some increased local revenue. The board increased the pre-K tuition this year due to competitive, to better match our competitors, and also because of the cost of the program. So I'm expecting $25,000 of additional revenue from that. And then the board also increased the transportation fee, and so there's additional revenue there. And then some of this is sort of accounting, but right now we buy, so at kiddos, at the elementary school, the lunches are all handled through kiddos, so we don't see the revenue and expense. It's just handled separately. We're going to start seeing revenue and expense, because parents will be paying us for the lunches, and we will be paying Quest for the food and labor. So you'll see increases in revenue and expense just due to the food service, but it's offsetting it kind of in and out. State budget revenue or state revenue assumptions, evidence-based funding, where I'm projecting to maintain the exact same level as last year. That's the minimum, and the state has been very consistent in paying that, and I fully expect to receive it next year. I am allocating that to Ed, the Operations and Maintenance Fund and the Transportation Funds to balance those funds.
Wasn't our evidence-based funding just like really, really minimal?
We get very little.
We get $560,000.
Oh, it's that much? I think there was some other
Yeah.
number.
That's, yeah, it's like the continuation of what we have always got.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Incrementally more.
That's the big point, is that we've always pretty much had that.
And it's a combination of what was general state aid and some special ed funding, mostly. And then the transportation categorical funding is another revenue stream, and I've conservatively budgeted that. The state is currently behind, I think, 2 quarters in payments, so they've been very good at paying the evidence-based funding amount, but the transportation claim or categorical funding has not been, they've not been consistent in paying that.
We're happy when we get it, because generally we don't know if we're going to.
But
get it or not.
that's a lot less. That's on the order of $50,000 to $60,000. So we negotiated our new teacher's contract, and as a result of all of the contract negotiations and the increases that the board just approved, salaries are going up 4.2% next year. There was a very large increase in the first year of the teacher's contract to get the base salaries up to attract new teachers because it's a very difficult job market and attracting new teachers. And then the out years, so the future years, the salary increase will be significantly lower. So we're sort of paying for it all up front in 1 year, and then the next years should be a lot easier to absorb in the budget. So the average increase for the LBTC was 6.5%, and then 3% for all other categories. There was no net change in staffing level. Benefits, we actually got a very favorable renewal on our insurance. We're projecting benefits to go down almost 1%, so this helped out a lot, mostly in the PPO. This is, in this age of insurance, of prescription and insurance inflation, that's a really excellent renewal. And that goes to our cooperative is doing a great job in controlling costs. This also was budgeted based on, also within the contract, as we increased salaries, we did get some increased or decreased employer contributions, so the teachers are contributing more towards their insurance in exchange for some of the salary increases, so that's part of that benefit reduction. And then also, I'm forecasting, we're going through open enrollment now, so I don't know, I expect to see some savings from people migrating to some of the additional plans that we offered, but that's not currently in the tentative budget because we don't know what that's going to be, so I budget it as if people were staying in their existing plans. Another really big change next year is special education. We have a significant number of outplacements. We just have a lot of kids with special needs in the district. Some who are in the district currently and some who are moving in the district. This is a significant cost increase on top of the salary increases. So this is also putting a strain on the budget. In addition to the outplacements, we're going to be contracting with NSSED for an additional 0.2 FTE of psychological services.
Really?
Yeah.
We had that many?
Yeah.
Capital spending, so we approved the casework and bathrooms at $275,000. The gym audiovisual equipment at $55,000. The boiler, I had budgeted at about $100,000, and when they came and did the walkthrough and bid it out and looked at it, the scope increased, and that was due to a lot of plumbing needs related to the boiler. So as the architect went through, they really, just the boilers themselves were $100,000, but when they got in and really started evaluating it, they needed to add this scope in order to do it right and have it last for a long time. This I'm not able to absorb in the operating budget, so this is pretty much would just have to, if we really want to do it, it has to come from fund balance. And
We're
it'd be totally
recommending that
incremental.
we do it because we've talked about it, but we'll need to take it from fund balance.
Well, we've been told they're on their last legs for years now,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right, and so it's, they could last another 5 years, they could go tomorrow, and that's not something that, if we have another winter like we had this year, we want to risk not having the
And
boilers
this will
working.
completely solve the boiler issues at the middle school.
Yeah,
For
I mean,
the
and
future.
and grant, there are no issues currently, but this will last another,
New air conditioners over there, new heaters there.
Yep.
yeah, and we're good.
This completes the cycle along with the casework and the bathrooms.
Okay.
The building is like brand new.
Then we'll be done. And then transportation, I'm projecting the same number of routes as last year and a 5% increase in route costs as we have already signed the contract. And then the special ed transportation costs will also increase consistent with the outplacement, so we'll see a big jump there as well. Technology, we're cycling out our MacBooks at the middle school, so we're replacing them with Chromebooks. We'll have 2 grade levels worth of Chromebooks. We're going to be, the 6th grade Chromebooks will move up to 7th, and we're buying new Chromebooks for the 6th graders. And then I believe the 4th or 5th graders are also going to be getting new Chromebooks next year. Our 8th grade math books will be coming off lease and being replaced with the Chromebooks. And then we brought an extension of our computer lease for the teacher computers to you, I think a month ago at about an $8,000 savings. And then food service expenditures, again, we've got the startup equipment costs of about $30,000 to $35,000 to outfit the kitchens and the cafeterias, and then the full cost of the food for the lunches at the elementary school will be seen in the budget, whereas before that flowed through KIPS. We are currently about $100,000 over budget or out of balance right now, and so I'll be spending the next week or so looking for ways to narrow the gap there.
And we all avoid Jay this last week while he's doing that, because we're afraid if we look him in the eye, one of our budget items will be
Yeah,
gone.
so right now we're assuming flat school budgets and PD budgets and just looking in other areas for things.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Khan?
And next week, we'll get a view of the fund balance?
Yes.
He's gonna do fund balance and projections
Okay.
Right, so
on May
in
28th.
the amended budget that's in your packet now, you'll see what the fund balance would look like at the end of this year, and then we'll talk about fund balance and projections next time.
It kinda all goes together.
Thank you. So.
Great job, Jay.
We're going to do the ECRA renewal? Is that an extended conversation, or did we already cover that?
We already covered that.
Good
We're,
enough. Okay.
you know, we use that extensively, and a lot. Our
And
teachers
how about
are
item
using it.
G, the food service program? I know we talked about that.
Covered that.
That's covered. So then we are done.
We are done.
So, is there anybody like to address the board? Any public comment? Not hearing any.
I move we adjourn.
I'll
Anybody have-
second that.
Second, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 8:13. Thank you very
Really
much.
good thing you called